an issue with my video, but I hope the session should go on smoothly. Yes, so today we are having a CSR reporting as our chapter, and it's a very small chapter. We don't have much of accounting provisions as such. You don't have much of the technical accounting which we used to do in Ind AS. This is more of a legal this is more of a study of the law. So we will be going through what is section 135. I'm sure you will also go through it in your corporate laws paper. So it's a very small chapter. I think I should be able to wind it up within 1.5 to 2 hours at the most. Okay, because there is nothing frankly to discuss in detail. Okay, only thing is there has been one amendment, a couple of amendments in by way of CSR amendment rules 2022, which was applicable with effect from September 22. So that will be applicable for May 2023 exam. Okay, at least that is what I understand. So we are having two amendments. The original rules were the CSR rules 2014. Then we came across CSR rules 2021 and followed by CSR amendment rules 2022. In between, the provisions of the act were also amended somewhere in 2019. So those amendments also we will be going through. Okay. So as far as the study mat is concerned, it has captured the amendments up to the CSR rules 2014. The original provisions of the section are maintained, followed by the amendment of the 2019 year. That is the amendment in the act. The module is yet to be updated with the latest amendments. So I think that should be out in a couple of weeks or so, or at least you will get a notification saying that these amendments are applicable to you. Okay. So with that background, let us start our discussion on corporate social responsibility. You can just listen. It's a theory class. There will not be much of problem solving as such. Whatever I have written down, whatever is there, you can just take a screenshot and keep it for your record. Okay. It's plain, simple legal provisions. There is nothing complicated about it. Okay. So good morning, Viraj, Soham, Kaushiki. Good morning. Okay. So now coming back to our provisions, CSR, you essentially have Section 135 of the Companies Act 2013, which deals with corporate social responsibility. Okay, so why did we have corporate social responsibility in the first place? I can present you arguments in favor of CSR and I can present you arguments against CSR as well. So CSR was brought about because companies, the general populace started to feel that the companies have a duty to fulfill their responsibilities towards the society. They take a lot of resources from the society, resources in the form of people, resources in the form of nature, resources in the form of, water, air. All these are being consumed by the companies, by the industries. So they have a duty to give back to the society, and that is why corporate social responsibility as a provision was introduced. So companies were largely focused on profits prior to this. Nothing wrong in that. Today also they should be focused on profits, but they felt that when the society is giving them so much of profits, it is but moral and ethical to ensure that these companies do something for the society. And for that reason, the CSR provisions were introduced. So this was the argument in favor of CSR. There are some advocates who say that why should the company decide? See, the company's ultimate goal is always shareholders' wealth maximization. Okay. Today also, there is no empirical study that confirms that companies that are doing social responsibility obligations are more valuable than the companies who are not performing social responsibility obligations. So there is no data to support this. There is no data to support that a company that is performing CSR obligations gets, for example, borrowings at a cheaper rate of interest. There is no such data that shows us that companies with CSR have a lower weighted average cost of capital as compared to companies not performing CSR. So essentially, CSR is in no way adding value to the shareholders of the particular company in question. Further, these advocates also say that why should the company's shareholders, all of them, agree with what is the corporate social responsibility expenditure of the company? So there may be a shareholder who is interested in ensuring that the girl child gets educated. There may be another shareholder who will be interested in looking at the archaeological monuments restoration. There may be another shareholder who would be willing to look after the Clean Ganga project. So when multitude of shareholders have their own sense of social responsibilities, why should they be made a slave to the CSR policy of the company? You increase the value, put that much extra value in the hands of the shareholders, and let the shareholders decide where they want to spend the money so that the society in general prospers. So these are the arguments against CSR. Okay, I gave you the reason why CSR is required. I gave you certain arguments against the CSR as well. Against the CSR was just for your knowledge. It's not for the examination purposes. But this is how the thought processes are there. We have two schools of thought in this regard. So coming back to our section, we have to follow CSR. Usme koi doubt nahi hai. Okay, so this is under section 135. So what is it applicable to? I think we have about 9 subsections to section 135. And after the 9 subsections, we have the related rules, which we will be going through. Okay, so 135.1, to which company CSR is applicable to? It is applicable to companies whose net worth is greater than or equal to 500 crores, or turnover is greater than or equal to 1000 crores, or net profit greater than or equal to 5 crores during the immediately preceding financial year. So when the provisions were initially introduced, the applicability was based on the preceding 3 years average net worth, average turnover, average net profit. That has been amended by the 2019 Act, and this is there in your study mat as well. So it is applicable to a company whose previous financial year met any of these criteria. So if we have to check for the applicability of CSR for FY 22-23, we will have to check whether the indicators are fulfilled for financial year 21-22. Okay, so if you look at your study material, you are having these particular requirements. Okay, so this is already what I have written. This is nothing but 135.1. This is nothing but section 135 subsection 1. Okay, so now what we look is any one condition is fulfilled during the previous year, you are required to fulfill your CSR responsibilities. Okay, so in this particular question that is there, ABC Limited is a company with a net worth of 200 crores manufacturing rubber parts for automobiles. The sale of the company are affected due to low demand of its products. Financial details of the previous years and the current year are given below. So first thing, what year are we looking at? We are looking at X3, X4. So you will look at which year's data? Only the preceding year. This data is not relevant for our assessment. So we will look at the preceding year. Am I given the net profit? Yes. It is more than 5 crore? Yes. So CSR requirements are applicable. CSR requirements are applicable. So now when this is applicable, so 135.1, if you fulfill that condition, what is the next step? What is the next step? The moment your CSR, you are falling under the ambit of corporate social responsibility, you are having an obligation to form a CSR committee, to constitute a CSR committee. So this CSR committee is again covered under two categories: companies that require independent directors and companies not requiring independent directors. So you have these various committees under the board. You cannot expect the board to convene any time for any decision that needs to be taken. You have audit committee, you have remuneration committee, you have like that, you have a CSR committee. So committee is a subset of the board of directors. So where companies require to appoint independent directors, then the CSR committee shall be formed of at least 3 directors, out of which at least 1 director would be an independent director. Okay. In the case of other companies, that means companies not requiring independent directors, then at least 2 directors shall be there on the CSR committee. So this is your obligation. The moment you meet the criteria under 135(1), then 135(3) tells you that you have to constitute a CSR committee. 135(3) tells you that you have to form a CSR committee. Sorry, not 135(3). I think the moment this is 135(1) only. Okay. And once that is done, you are required to disclose the composition of the CSR committee under section 135(2). Under section 135(2). So is this clear? 135(1) is clear, the threshold limits. Once the threshold limit is done, that only tells you that you have to form a CSR committee, 135(1). 135(2) requires you to disclose the composition of the CSR committee. Are the first 2 subsections clear? Yes. Are the first 2 subsections clear? Nothing difficult. Okay. Is it okay? Yes. All right. So now once that is done, we then move on to 135(3). We then move on to 135(3). So let us come to your study material. So this is 135(1). Every company having this shall constitute a CSR committee consisting of 3 or more directors, including at least 1 independent director. If it is not required, then form it with 2 or more directors. So this whole thing is 135(1). Okay. All right. So ye ho gaya mera 135(1). Let us then move on. The board shall disclose the composition of the CSR committee in its report. This is section 135(2). What does the CSR committee do? What is the responsibility of the CSR committee? The CSR committee shall formulate and recommend. This is 135(3). You don't need to remember the subsections, but I'm just taking you through it, okay, so that I ensure that I complete the whole provision. The CSR committee shall formulate and recommend to the board a CSR policy indicating the activities to be undertaken by the company in the areas or the subject specified in Schedule 7. So this is what the CSR committee will tell, that is where to spend, and the amount of expenditure to be incurred on the above activities. That is how much to spend. Okay. So these 2 questions is what the CSR committee will answer. Where should the company put its CSR spends? And second one is how much to put. And finally, it shall monitor the CSR policy from time to time. So this is what 135(3) tells the company to do. Okay, the CSR committee, it shall tell where to spend. Where can the company spend? Well, primarily the requirement is to spend in areas surrounding the company. So suppose the industrial area came after cutting down a lot of trees, then you can carry out a tree planting activity, and that would be your CSR. If you're having lot of employees from the surrounding, then you could perhaps consider constructing a school for those employees. I'm talking about the shop floor employees who do not have the means to send their children outside for good education. Then in that case, you are having the applicability. I'm coming to that, Shailendra. There is an amendment also. So first let us understand the provisions as it is. Then we discuss the amendments. Okay. So the CSR committee shall formulate and recommend where to spend, preferably in the surrounding areas. Acha, surrounding areas, I have fulfilled the criteria, but I still have to meet the liability. Then you can consider spending it in any subject area specified in Schedule 7. Schedule 7 mein what you are having? You are having a huge list of activities. Eradicating hunger, educating the girl child, cleaning of rivers, then donations to Army Widows Fund or Army pension schemes. So all these criteria are there in Schedule 7, which we will be going through in a short while. So these are the places where you can spend the money, and how much to spend, that also we will see. But that is what the CSR committee will tell to the board. And finally, the CSR committee shall monitor the CSR policy of the company from time to time. So these are the obligations that are put on the CSR committee. So this is 135.3. Coming to the next one. What is the role of the board? The board shall approve the CSR policy of the company. So once the committee tells you, it shall approve the CSR policy. So that is 135.4. Disclose the contents and ensure that the activities are duly fulfilled. So ye ho gaya mera 135.4. You shall approve the CSR policy, and then you will ensure that you disclose it and place it on the company's website. And finally, you will ensure that they are duly executed by the company. So this is the requirement of section 135 subsection 4. 135 subsection 4. Now the question is how much it has to spend. How much it has to spend. Okay, let me see. Yes. So 135.5 tells you how much the amount should be spent. If the company is in existence for more than 3 years, then you will be spending at least 2% of the average net profit of the company during the 3 immediately preceding financial years. So at least, that means, can you spend more than that? Yes, you can. If a company is in existence for 1 to 3 years, that means less than 3 years, then at least 2% of average net profits of the company since incorporation. So these are the how much to spend criteria that is mentioned. So this is ensure that the company spends. This is 135.5. This is 135.5. Okay. All right. CSR provisions will not apply to a company in the first financial year of a newly incorporated company. Okay, so newly incorporated company will not have a preceding year, and that is why year 1 there won't be any CSR applicability. A company can spend more than 2%, most welcome, no problem. The provisions are worded as saying at least 2% of average net profits of the company. So now if you look at the wordings, ensure that the company spends at least 2% of the average net profits, or where the company has not completed 3 financial years during such immediately preceding financial years. Okay, by giving preference to the local area and the areas around it where it operates. By giving preference to local areas. Okay, so this is what is given under 135.5. This is what is given under 135.5. Is it okay? Yes. Is it fine? Yes. So 2% of average net profits is the minimum spends. Now, where to spend is what is given under first proviso as a recommendation. Carry out CSR activities or spends preferably in local area and areas around which the company operates. So if you look at this, by giving preference, this is first proviso to 135.5. This is first proviso to section 135.5. Okay, so that is what we have written here. First proviso to 135.5. Carry out CSR activities or spends preferably in local area and areas around which the company operates. Because you are taking the resources from your surrounding areas, so it is but an obligation that you have to return back in some form or the other to the surrounding areas. तो ये हो गया मेरा first proviso. Coming to the third proviso, we will do second proviso and 135(6) together, because there we need to understand a couple of things and they are related to each other. So we will do first proviso, we've already done. Then we will do third proviso now. And then we will do second proviso and 135(6) together. So third proviso to section 135(5) tells us, if the company spends on CSR an amount greater than the minimum spends, that means what? Your spends are greater than 2%. You have spent more than 2%. Then you are having two options. The first option, treat such excess as an expense and write it off to the P&L. Now this came in as an amendment. पहले ये था नहीं, आपने incur किया, so that becomes an expense. So here the act is giving an option. So the first case is you can treat it as an expense and write it off to the P&L. The second treatment is whatever extra you have spent, you can treat it as a prepaid CSR expense, and you can carry it forward to the subsequent years. Sir, कितने साल तक carry forward कर सकते? For the next 3 financial years. Even after 3 years, if the amount spent is in excess, then at the end of the 3rd financial year, you will transfer it to the P&L. Means carry forward is permitted for successive 3 financial years. Thereafter also, if you are unable to utilize it, then that amount lapses. You will have to take it to the P&L. Acha, in the first case, if I spend more than 2% and I wrote it off to the P&L, and after 2 years I wake up and say, yaar, maine 2 saal pehle, 2 years prior, I had spent more than 2%. Can I utilize that amount now? Answer is no. Aapne jo first year mein decide kiya, what you decide in the first year when you spend, that decision continues lifelong. Later on, suppose in second year you spend more than 2%, you can change that. But the first year spends, you cannot in the future say that I paid extra so much, so now I want to set off that. वो नहीं चलेगा. The moment you say you will treat it as an expense, then there won't be any resurrection in the future. Resurrection means I cannot say that I had spent more, so now I want to utilize it. वो आप नहीं कर सकते. That you cannot do under any circumstances. So are you clear with the third proviso? Yes. This is an amendment that has happened. Earlier क्या था? This amendment was not there. Okay. So you did not get this. So suppose, one second, let me see. Okay. So suppose, okay, fine. Okay, I'll write it here. So suppose the average net profits for the previous 3 years come to 100. What is the minimum spend that you have to do? 2%. That means you have to spend 2 rupees. Now, what did you do? Actual spends is equal to 5. That means what? Have you spent more than 2%? Yes, you have spent more than 2%. Now, if you have spent more than 2%, you have two options. Option one, write off 5 to P&L. Write off 5 to the P&L and finish it off. You have exhausted it. Okay. So this is the first option. Second option is I will carry forward 3. So to the P&L, you will write off 2 and then you will carry forward 3. The carry forward 3, you will do it for how long? For the next 3 financial years. In that also, if you cannot utilize this 3, then it lapses at the end of the 3rd financial year. You will write it off to the P&L. Is this part clear? Yes. Is this part clear? Yes. Are we clear with this? It is an option that is there. Okay. It's not a mandatory. Okay. It is an option. Now, suppose you opted this one, option 1. That means write off 5 rupees entirely to the P&L. Whatever extra you have spent, that also you have taken it to the P&L. Now, suppose in year 2, you are having again average net profit as 100 into 2%, 2. But you had to incur certain capex expenditure, and because of that capex expenditure, there is a drain on your cash. You don't have adequate cash. So now in year 2, you wake up and say, Acha, mere paas na, I had a surplus CSR that I had spent. I want to utilize that CSR. So now the question is, you opted for option 1. So there is an extra that you had spent of 3 rupees, but you took it entirely to the P&L. Now in year 2, you cannot wake up and say, I will utilize the 3 rupees to meet my liability of 2. This you cannot say. Why? Because you've already made an option in year 1, in year 1, that I will write off the entire amount to the P&L. And when you made that option, you obviously cannot go back on that option. Okay, so it is an option that was made once and it is irrevocable. You cannot utilize it. This utilization is not permitted. Acha, in year 2, suppose I spend 5%. Kaise taise karke I take a loan and I spend 5%. So I get 5 rupees. Now, can I again say requirement was 2, excess is 3. Can I carry forward this 3? Yes, this you can carry forward. This you can carry forward because this is pertaining to year 2's spends. But year 1 spends, you have written off to the P&L. You cannot resurrect it in the future. Is it okay? Yes. Yes. So year on year, you will have to make an option whenever you spend in excess. Okay, whenever you spend in excess. Sir, can we decide to expense 4 and carry forward 1? Choice is yours. Choice is yours. You can say I will expense 4 and carry forward 1. The option is yours. Okay. But whatever option you take now, you cannot modify that option in the future in respect of that particular period. Is it okay now? Yes. All clear? All clear? Yes. No, I don't think so, Viraj. We cannot take interest on loan for CSR as CSR expense because CSR is an obligation that you are taking. Is an obligation. Okay. You cannot say that I took a loan for CSR because the statute will always say you should plan your cash flows. Okay. You should plan your cash flows. The fact that you don't have cash for CSR indicates that you have spent the money somewhere else. Indicates that you have spent the money somewhere else. So they will say you've taken a loan for that and CSR you are meeting out of your own funds. So that is always going to be available. Okay. So ye ho gaya mera third proviso to section 135(5). Third proviso to section 135(5). Viraj, is it clear? Soham has confirmed. Kaushiki has confirmed. Yes, all of you have confirmed. So let us run to the this thing. So this is the amendment which is highlighted here. This is third proviso to 135(5). First proviso we did, third proviso we did. If the company spends an amount in excess of the requirements, then it may set off set of such excess amount for such number of succeeding financial year as may be prescribed. As may be prescribed. That means prescribed period is 3 financial years. 3 financial years. Okay. तो ये हो गया मेरा third proviso to 135(5). Okay. The next one is, this is 135(6). This is 135(6). Okay. So now let us look at what 135(6) is with the help of some example. Okay. See, I am referring, maybe thoda sa cheating kar raha hu. I am referring what I had done for the last class only. Okay. Because the concept largely remains the same. Okay. So now, coming to 135(6) and second proviso to section 135(5). We are going to discuss these two things together. Okay. Because they are related, you will be able to correlate in a nice manner. Okay. So suppose we have XYZ Limited. The CSR amount to be spent is 200 crores. The CSR amount to be spent is 200 crores. Till now, nothing is spent. Okay, financial year 2022. Till now, nothing is spent. Okay, except as mentioned below. What is mentioned below? That is the only spends that are there. So what it has done is, it has decided to construct a school. It has decided to construct a school. The estimated cost of that school is rupees 70 crores. The estimated cost is 70 crores. So if the estimated cost is 70 crores, you know that this is a project which is going on. You know that this is a project which is going on. That means out of 200, 70 is probably going to be incurred for the school. So the undecided amount is 130 crores. How did I get 130? 200 total. Estimate for the school is 70. So you are left with 130. You are left with 130. And in this school, you have already paid an amount of 30 crores. You have already paid an amount of 30 crores. So we call this as an ongoing project. The school is an ongoing project of the company. Okay. So are you clear about the facts right now? 200 crore is your CSR liability. I have identified that I need to construct a school. The cost of that is about 70 crores. Out of 70, I have already paid 30. So this becomes my ongoing project. Out of 200, 70 is for an ongoing project. So 130 crore, I have still not decided where to spend it. I have still not decided where to spend it. So these are the facts. These are the facts. Now, why these amendments came, or why was this provision inserted? Okay, see, many times what happens is companies know where they have to spend, but the time of fulfilling the project, the time required to fulfill the project generally extends beyond a time gap of 1 year or so. Like constructing a school, or, you know, all these kind of activities, constructing a hospital, all these kind of activities generally take more than 1 year. Okay. Also, the moment you identify my liability 200 crore, cost of the project is 70 crore, धाड़ करके if you give 70 crore, तो ऐसे थोड़े ना होगा, वो कॉन्ट्रैक्टर भाग गया, कल को 70 करोड़ मिल गया, then what are you going to do? आपने पैसे तो दे दिए, but the school is not constructed. भाई, you will give the money depending on the work which is done, no? You will not say that you take the entire money because this is my obligation and now you build. ऐसे तो नहीं कह सकते. You will give the money depending on the degree of work that the contractor has completed. So therefore, you have the intent of spending. That is why the Act calls it as an ongoing project. Now, since you know where to spend, 70 is your cost estimated. 30 you paid, that means you know for sure by 40 crores I'm going to pay for this school. 40 crores I'm going to pay for this school. So what the act tells is transfer the balance 40 crores to an escrow account. And what will be the name of that escrow account? Unspent CSR account. Do you know what is an escrow account? Do you know what is an escrow? Yes, escrow account is an account that can be used only for the particular purposes for which it was opened. Only for the purposes for which it was opened. So you would have read something known as capital gains account scheme in your capital gains chapter. Okay, so those who want to avail exemptions under section 54 of the Income Tax Act, what they can do is they can park their money in a capital gains account scheme. They can park their money in a capital gains account scheme. And once they park the money in the, so suppose you sell a house and you want to buy a flat. But buying the flat does not require immediate outflow. It will happen over a 2-year period, depending on the degree of completion. But you have to file your return by 31st July. So you have to show that you have spent the amount when in fact you haven't spent it. So what you are going to do is you will park the capital gains in the capital gains account scheme. And once you put the money in the capital gains account scheme, what you are going to do is you will ensure that the money from the capital gains account scheme will be utilized only to pay to the builder who is building your flat. So we call this as an escrow account. Escrow account is a dedicated account. उधर से पेमेंट सिर्फ उसके लिए जाएगा जिसके लिए वो अकाउंट खुला था. रेरा under Real Estate Regulation Act, we are opening an escrow account for each project. The moment a flat buyer deposits the money in the RERA designated account, the builder has to utilize 70% of those proceeds only for the project that he is developing. 30% he can use for whatever he wants. Earlier, ये builder लोग क्या करते थे? They used to take the money and they used to buy something else. कहीं और पैसे डाल दिया, they developed some other project and then वहां से जो पैसा आ गया यहाँ पे divert किया. So there was a lot of diversion of money between the projects. So the government came out with the Real Estate Regulation Act where they said the RERA account will be an escrow account. The bank will release the money from the escrow provided it is only for the project for which the RERA account was opened. So this is what is known as an escrow account. So here also the company has to transfer the balance 40 crore to an escrow account which will be called as the unspent CSR account. And this unspent CSR account jo hai, the money from this will be paid only for the school construction and nothing else. Only for the school, that you are constructing. The bank will ensure that the check jo bhi aap issue karoge, whatever payments are being made, it has to be made only for the purposes of the construction of the school. We call this as an escrow account. Okay, an account that is designated for the purposes for which it was opened. Another example of an escrow account, a company declares dividend. The dividend is approved by the shareholders. The moment a dividend is declared and approved, it becomes a liability. And within 7 days, you have to transfer the amount of dividend to a separate dividend account, to a separate dividend bank account. That dividend bank account is an escrow account. Now that dividend bank account, the funds which you will transfer from your company's bank account to the dividend account, the outflow from that dividend account will happen only to the shareholders on account of dividend, nothing else. Sir, some shareholders are not traceable. If they are not traceable, वो balance इसी account में पड़ा रहेगा. The balance which will be there in this account will obviously be the balances of those shareholders whom you are unable to trace for the purposes of dividend. And for that purpose, you will keep the balance in the dividend account for a period of 7 years. And after 7 years also, if the shareholder is not traceable, then you are required to transfer that amount to Investor Awareness and Protection Fund. You can never take back the dividend money from the dividend account to your regular operational bank account. Escrow accounts are very, very strict in their operation because these are accounts which are created pursuant to a particular statute. So the statute ensures that the money in these accounts is utilized only for the purposes for which they are opened. So in this case, the unspent CSR account of 40 crore in our example has to be utilized only for the purposes of constructing the school. So likewise, you could have a hospital, you could have something else, whatever it is, you could have a money that is set aside. It is an ongoing project. So you deposit 40 crore in this unspent CSR account. Sir, what is the time limit? Within 30 days from the end of the financial year. Do you know where you have to spend? Yes. Do you know the cost? Yes. So harm kya hai? When you know that it is a liability that you have to pay, park it within 1 month from the end of the financial year. That is what is the requirement under this provision. Okay. So within 30 days, you will put the money in the unspent CSR escrow account. Under the unspent CSR escrow account. And then what the statute tells, you have to ensure that the project is completed within 3 financial years from the end of the current financial year. So my CSR was for which year? Sir, our CSR was for the financial year 21-22. That means you will have to ensure that the project gets completed by 22-23, 23-24, 24-25. By 31st March 2025, you have to ensure that the CSR, that the project is completed, the school is constructed. You cannot expect the government to perpetually grant you time to complete the project. So within 3 years from the financial year, you have to ensure that the school in our example is constructed. Even after 3 years, if the project is not completed, then within 3 years, within 30 days from the end of the third financial year, you will have to transfer the amount to the funds specified in Schedule 7. Kahan transfer karoge? Transfer the unspent amount to the funds specified in Schedule 7 by 30th April. That is within 30 days from the end of the third financial year. Is it okay? Are you clear with the provisions, with this provision? Yes. Ongoing project. Are you clear? Don't read the last sentence which is written in red. I'm coming to that. But as of now, are you okay with the provisions? Yes, everyone. Kaushiki, Viraj, Soham, Shailendra, Sanjay. Yes, are you clear? Did you understand escrow account? Yes. Yes, yes, it is clear. It is clear. Okay. So ye ho gaya mera one part of the provision. This is under 135(6). This is under 135(6). Now we come to the sentence which is written here. See, suppose I'm continuing the same example. 2021-22, you have paid 30 crores. Okay. 22-23, you will pay, let us say, another 10 crores. 23-24, you will pay another 15 crores. So 30 plus 10, 40 plus 10, 50, 55 and 24, 25. You will pay the balance 15 crores and this comes to 70 crores. This comes to 70 crores. Now please pay attention. In 22-23, suppose the CSR liability, see, it was 200 crores here. In this case, let us assume it is 205 crores. In this case, let us assume it is 215 crores. And in this case, let us assume it is 225 crores. Now, pay attention. My question to you is, don't read this, okay? My question to you is, can the company say, in the year 22-23, my liability is 205 crores, I agree, but out of that, I have already paid 10 crores towards the school. So therefore, I will have to pay only 195 crore. Do you think the company is correct in making this argument? Yes. Do you think the company is correct in making this argument? Likewise, the company says 215 crore for 23-24, but I have already paid 15 crore. So therefore, I only have to pay 200 crore. Do you think this argument is correct? Do you think the argument of 225 out of which 15 is paid? Do you think this argument is correct? Do you think this argument is correct? Okay. It is not. It is not. Why? Because this 70 crore is actually an obligation of the first year 2021-22. So this argument that the subsequent amounts which you pay is towards the respective years in which you are paying towards that CSR liability, that argument is not right. 70 crores is purely the burden of 2021-22. 22-23, 23-24, 24-25 spends will start afresh. You cannot club this 70 crore there. You cannot club this 70 crore there. So therefore, this is what is written here. Amounts paid towards ongoing projects in 22-23, 23-24 and 24-25 are over and above the CSR liability for such respective years. Over and above. Matlab 205 plus 10 is what you are going to pay. 215 plus 15 is what you are going to pay. So this is over and above the liabilities of 22-23, 23-24 and 24-25. Okay. So this is what is your section 135 subsection 6. 135 subsection 6. Okay. All right. So if project is incomplete, ये हो गया मेरा provision. Is it okay? Yes. Now I had a question. Sir, the escrow amount will also be deemed as included in the amount paid for CSR? Yes. Yes, because look at the way the project is worded. Look at the way the section is worded. Ongoing project, you will have to transfer the balance amount in. You will have to transfer the balance amount to the escrow account, which is unspent CSR account. Now, the moment you transfer, can you get this money back ever in the future? Answer is no. You will not get this money back. Sir, why? See, I have to ensure that the project is completed within 3 years. You ensured that. Now you ensured that you got a cost saving. So you did not have to spend so much. So if you have a cost saving, so the liability was 40 crore. You did the project in, let us say, 38 crores. So remaining 2 crore rupees, will not come back to you, the company. It is a CSR obligation. It is similar to that unpaid dividend account which is there. That money will never come to the company. Likewise, after 3 years, that 2 crore surplus which is there, you will have to transfer it to the fund that is specified in Schedule 7. Fund matlab any fund, Clean Ganga Fund, PM Cares Fund, and then you have so many other funds, fund for the army welfare, fund for army widows welfare. Yes, so all these funds are there. You put the money there, government will say, we will take care of your responsibilities because you were unable to fulfill the project within a 3-year period. Okay, so this is how you will carry out the activity in respect of an ongoing project. तो इसको हम लोग बोलते हैं ongoing project, and this is 135. This is 135(6). 135 subsection 6. Okay, coming to the balance 130 crore for which we have not decided. Here you don't know where to spend. So what the government tells, if you don't know where to spend, you transfer the money to us, that is Schedule 7. And in Schedule 7, once you transfer, we will incur the activities of social responsibility. You give the money to us, we will do the needful. So this is second proviso to section 135(5). This is the second proviso to section 135(5). Is it okay? Yes. Are you clear with second proviso to 135(5) and are you clear with 135(6)? Yes. Typically, when you keep the money in these escrow accounts, they are normally nothing but normal current accounts, and current accounts do not fetch any interest. So therefore, you cannot say what about the interest earned within 3 years on the escrow account. Okay, but we will come to that part also later when certain CSR activities give rise to an income. What am I going to do in that? We will look at that later on. We'll come to that. Just give me some time. Okay, so far is it okay? Yes. Soham, did you follow both second proviso to 135(5) and 135(6)? Viraj, did you follow? Sanjay, did you follow? Shailendra, did you follow? Yes. All right, great. So that takes care of this part, and then let us move on to the next one. Okay, now if you look at this, this is 135(6), transferred pursuant to an ongoing project, transferred to a special account. This is the escrow, to be called the unspent CSR account. Such amount shall be spent within 3 financial years from the date of the transfer, failing which the company shall transfer the same within 30 days from the date of completion of the 3rd financial year. Okay, so ye ho gaya mera 135(6). This is 135(6). Okay, now this particular requirement is also there, where the amount to be spent by a company under subsection 5 does not exceed 50 lakh rupees. Then requirement of CSR committee is not applicable, and the functions of such committee shall be discharged by the board of directors. 135(9). This is 135(9). So see, having a committee means you will incur expenditure for that committee. Board meetings honge, decisions honge, discussions honge. So all of that is subject to a materiality of 50 lakhs. So the amount to be spent, that is that 2% of net profit, if it does not exceed 50 lakhs, then there is no need to constitute a CSR committee. You can directly discharge the function through the board of directors. This is 135(9). This is 135(9). And now there is an amendment by 2022 CSR rules. Okay. What is the amendment? This amendment is there in the CSR rules. Okay. What is the rule? The rule says that, please look at this carefully. A company having any amount in its unspent CSR account as per section 135(6) shall constitute a CSR committee and comply with the provisions contained in subsections 2 to 6 of the said section. That means 135(6) tak they will comply with the conditions. Okay. So what does it mean? Whether my obligation is 50 lakhs or even less than that, if you have a balance in the unspent CSR account, कुछ भी हो, 1 रुपया भी हो, then you will constitute a CSR committee. You will disclose the names of the directors who are there on the CSR committee. You will carry out, you will have a CSR policy. You will put it on your website. You will disclose what are the functions you are carrying on. All of that will be done by virtue of this amendment. So any balance in unspent CSR constitute a CSR committee. Their materiality is not going to apply. Is it okay? So this is the amendment that has been introduced by 2022 CSR Amendment Rules 2022, which came into force from September 2022. Is it okay? Yes. Are we clear? So Shailendra, your point is addressed as well as the amendment also is addressed. Okay. So second proviso is done. 135(6) is also done. 135(9) is also done. Okay. Shall we proceed further? Shall we proceed further? Yes. If amount is less than 50 lakh, that is what I'm telling. See, 2% of net profit. If this amount is less than 50 lakhs, if this amount is less than 50 lakhs, no CSR committee required. 2% is mandatory. You cannot say that 2% is not applicable. 2% applicable hai. You apply 2%, and after applying 2%, the amount has come to below 50 lakhs. If that is the case, then there is no need for constituting a CSR committee. There is no need for constituting a CSR committee. Is it okay? Yes. Is it fine? शैलेंद्र, बात समझ में आ गई आपको? Yes, we can have a chart something like this. CSR committee. CSR obligations less than 50 lakhs. Less than 50 lakhs. If that is the case, CSR committee not required. Board of Directors will discharge the obligations. Board of Directors will discharge the obligations. Now, CSR obligations greater than 50 lakhs. Formulate नहीं, form. form CSR committee, disclose the composition and follow recommendations of the committee, and balance in unspent CSR account, then also form CSR committee. All the things remain the same. So you will form a CSR committee if the obligations are more than 50 lakhs or if there is a balance in the unspent CSR account. Is it okay? Yes. Are we clear? All right. Let's proceed. Okay. So note it down. So let us proceed to the next one. So ye ho gaya 135(6) and second proviso. Okay. All right. Now, these are your penal provisions. 135(7). 135(7). Okay. So what is 135(7)? If a company defaults in complying with 135(5) and 6, penalty of twice the amount required to be transferred to the fund. That is, this is if you do not have an ongoing project, or the unspent CSR account. This is if you have a project, as the case may be, or rupees 1 crore, whichever is less. Whichever is less. In addition, every officer in default, etc. Every officer in default shall be liable to a penalty of 1/10 of the amount required to be transferred to the fund or the unspent amount, or 2 lakh rupees, whichever is less. So these are your penal provisions. So 135(7) penalty. 135(8) kya bolta hai? 135(8) is telling that if you are going to the government can give directions to whom this provisions will be applicable. If the government gives such directions, then such companies also shall comply with the CSR requirements. And 135(9), we have seen the section already. Okay, so a quick recap. 135(1) gives the limits. If the limits criteria you fulfill, you will have to constitute a CSR committee. So this is 135(1). 135(2), composition of CSR committee is to be disclosed. 135(3), what the CSR committee will do. It will tell where to spend. It will tell how much to spend. It will ensure that it monitors where the amount is spent. So 135(3). 135(4), disclose the CSR policy. Place the same on the company's website and ensure that the activities are duly executed. So ye ho gaya 135(4). 135(5), ensure that minimum 2% of the average net profits. This is the amount that needs to be spent. Okay, 2% of the preceding 3 years average net profits you will have to spend. Okay, so ye ho gaya 135(5). Last thing what we will see is, what do you mean by net profit? Because we have so many net profit references in the Companies Act. So 135(5) tells us that there is an explanation to that. Explanation to 135(5) tells us that the net profit for these purposes will mean the net profit as computed for the purposes of managerial remuneration. That means net profit as per section 198. Net profit as per section 198. Okay. So that is explanation to 135.5. Then we did 135.6 that dealt with ongoing project. Then we had the provisos to 135.5. Proviso 1 tells us spend the amount in the nearby areas. Second proviso to 135.5, if you are not sure where to spend, put it in the fund within 6 months. And last third proviso to that section, what does it cover? Third proviso tells us that if you have spent an excess amount, you have the freedom to carry it forward for a period of 3 subsequent years, for a period of 3 subsequent financial years. Okay, so that is done. Coming to the next part, 135.6 ho gaya, 135.7 is the penalty, 135.8 government directions, 135.9 is your this CSR committee to be formed only if the spends exceed 50 lakhs, only if the spends exceed 50 lakh rupees. Okay. And the amendment we saw that if there is any balance in the unspent CSR account, a CSR committee has to be formulated. Okay. So 135 is done entirely. Okay. Is it mandatory for group companies, subsidiaries, joint ventures, associates to follow the same option? No. Each company will be assessed individually. Okay, each company is assessed individually for applicability of CSR and their own CSR policy. Although obviously the CSR policy of the subsidiary at least will definitely be determined by the holding company, but it's not required. They can have their own policy. Okay, so this is how you are having the CSR amounts that require to be spent. Is it okay? Yes. तो ये हो गया. Do this chart for homework. It's exactly what we have discussed. कुछ नया नहीं है. Okay. Now, government can notify any company. Yes, it can give a notification for any company, class of companies, and such company has to comply. Okay, koi rule nahi, kuch nahi. So, company sees some industry making bumper profits, it can come out and say you follow CSR. Okay, so wo company has to follow. All right, so that is done. Then we move on to illustration 4. You can see typically this is a case where amounts are earmarked. Okay, earmark me once you must be buying classmate notebooks. Classmate notebooks के पीछे लिखा रहता है for every notebook that you buy, 1 rupee goes towards educating an underprivileged child. So this is known as earmarking. Okay. Earmarking is not the same as spending. Earmarking means you are setting the money aside. Spending means आपके जेब से पैसे जाता है and it is actually paid to somebody, okay, or for some purpose. So therefore, all these earmarkings cannot qualify as a CSR expenditure. It is merely setting aside the amount. Okay, so this one is done. You can go through this for homework because you would already have done net profit computation for managerial remuneration. The same thing is what is mentioned here. Okay, so you go through this. That is for your homework. I will not be discussing that. Coming next, important points on CSR activities. It will be undertaken by the company as per the stated CSR policy. How can it be undertaken? It can be undertaken through a company established under Section 8 of the Act, or a registered trust or a registered society established by the company singly or along with any other company. Okay. Company established under Section 8 of the Act, or a registered trust or a society established by the central government or state government, or any act or any entity established under an act of parliament or a state legislature. So, this case, Infosys carries out its CSR activities through its own company, Infosys Foundation. So Infosys Foundation was run by Sudha Murthy. Yes, so Infosys Foundation is purely into carrying out these activities. Okay. So Infosys carries out the activity through its Section 8 company, that is Infosys Foundation. Okay. Alternatively, suppose you are a company providing accounting services. Okay, company, not auditing, accounting. So accounting services can be provided, accounting, financial reporting, etc. And you are a huge entity. So therefore, you are able to identify what are the issues which are there. You are able to identify where there is a problem, and what you do is you have the intent to ensure research on this happens. So what the company will do, the company will say, I will give my money to ICAI Accounting Research Foundation. It is a Section 8 company established by an entity which is established under an act of parliament. ICAI came by virtue of a statute, and ICAI has formulated the Accounting Research Foundation to promote research in the field of accounting. So therefore, the board of that company may decide we will carry out our CSR activities through the Accounting Research Foundation. So these are the two examples for the manner in which CSR activities can be carried out. A company may also collaborate with other companies for undertaking projects or programs of CSR activities. But what is important is they should be in a position to report separately. They should be in a position to report separately. And you will ensure that these activities are undertaken only in India. Obviously, you cannot have a CSR act. You cannot have an activity conducted somewhere outside India and say that I did my CSR activity. How can we verify? We cannot verify. Okay. So therefore, only within India. The projects or programs or activities that benefit only the employees of the company and their families shall not be considered as CSR activities. CSR is intended to benefit the society. Company should not get any benefit out of that. Company should not get any benefit out of that. So therefore, if you're establishing, say, a school only for employees, कोई और admission ले नहीं सकता वहां पे, then that becomes an activity for the benefit of the employees. It will not be regarded as CSR. You don't know, companies are very creative in avoiding the statutory requirements. Okay, they are very, very creative. So they will start doing everything for employees because employees के लिए करेंगे, employees मेहनत करेंगे हमारे लिए, they will work for us. So therefore, the act is very clear. Exclusively for employees is not CSR. It becomes something like a staff welfare that you are doing in the name of CSR. So therefore, that is excluded. Okay. Then build CSR capacities of their own personnel through implementing agencies, through institutions with established track records. Okay. Now they will carry out a CSR impact assessment. They will carry out a CSR impact assessment, build CSR capacities of their own personnel as well as those of their implementing agencies through institutions with established track record, and such expenditure. What is the impact assessment? It shall not exceed 5% of total CSR expenditure. Now, this is what has undergone a change. Okay. This is what has undergone a change. Instead of 5%, it will be, I think so, 2%. Okay. 1 second. Let me just check. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 4, 7, 8. In rule 8, sub rule 3. CSR rules. 1 second. Rule 8. Okay. So this was a CSR impact assessment report. So for impact assessment report, the requirement was that the money spent on undertaking impact assessment, you can book the expenditure towards CSR. It shall not exceed 5% of the total CSR expenditure or 50 lakh rupees, whichever is less. This is what is mentioned here. Shall not exceed 5% of the CSR expenditure. This is amended. This is amended. And amendment क्या बोलता है? What does the amendment tell us? 5% will be substituted by 2%. Whichever is less will be substituted by whichever is higher. So 5% के बदले में this will become 2%. Whichever is less के बदले में this will become whichever is higher. So impact assessment is restricted to 2% or 50 lakh rupees, whichever is higher. Okay. So you can carry out an impact assessment. You can carry out an impact assessment of their CSR projects. Every company having a CSR obligation of 10 crores or more in the 3 immediately preceding financial years shall undertake an impact assessment. That means they want to assess what is the impact their CSR has created on the society through an independent agencies of the CSR projects having outlays of 1 crore rupees or more. So Reliance carries out so many CSR projects. Unilever carries out so many CSR projects. So they should be able to outline what is the impact their CSR has created. Okay. Ultimately, there should be some benefit to the society because of that CSR. So those impact assessments that you are incurring will have a cost. So the cost of that was earlier restricted to 5% or 50 lakh, whichever is less. Now it has been modified to 2% of the total CSR expenditure or 50 lakh rupees, whichever is higher, whichever is higher. So this is the amendment that has come in your September 2022. Contribution to a political party cannot be recognized as a CSR expenditure. Okay. All right. Now, where do I spend the money? Where do I spend the money? That is a huge list. Okay. You don't have to remember the list. Okay. It is Schedule 7. Eradicating hunger, poverty, malnutrition, Swachh Bharat Kosh, promotion of sanitation and making available the potable drinking water, promoting education through including special education and vocational skills, gender equality, empowering women, setting up old age homes, daycare centers, environmental sustainability, protection of flora and fauna, contribution to the Clean Ganga Fund for rejuvenation of the river Ganga. What is the use of an impact assessment? See, ultimately, the public should be benefiting from the CSR. Okay. And that should be told to the government. I cannot go on spending CSR and see that nobody is benefiting out of that. If I have planted the trees, today the trees should grow and they must provide, they must grow, they must be maintained, they must provide what you call shade, oxygen, whatever is their condition kya hai uska. What is the yield of oxygen the trees are generating? That we should get probably if you have constructed your factory by cutting down the trees. Then if it is educating the girl child, how many girl children have you educated? Till what class have they been educated? All that you will have to give, because these are indicators of development of the society. These are indicators of development of the society. So you will have to conduct the impact assessments. Otherwise, there is no record of where this money is going. CSR to kar rahe ho, but what is the outcome of that CSR? Bhai, kuch to chahiye na, I need some proof. So therefore, if it exceeds 2%, it will not be regarded as CSR. Okay. Up to 2% it is allowed. Beyond that, you take it as a normal expenditure. You cannot take it as CSR expenditure. So out of 100 rupees CSR, Up to 2 rupees you can spend. More than 2 rupees, suppose you spent 5, 3 rupees cannot be regarded as CSR. You will have to spend 98 entirely on the CSR. 100 may say 2 for impact assessment, 98 for other CSR spends. Okay, the 3 rupees extra that you spent, that is not going to be treated as CSR. Okay. Protection of national heritage, art and culture, restoration of buildings and sites, etc. Measures for the benefit of armed force veterans, war widows and their dependents. Armed police forces, paramilitary forces, their dependents, including the widows. Promote rural sports, contribution to the PM National Relief Fund or the PM CARES Fund or any other fund set up by the central government. Contribution to incubators or R&D projects. Contribution to public funded universities, IITs, DBT, Ayush, vagera, vagera. Rural development project, slum area project, disaster management, including rehabilitation, reconstruction and relief activities. So huge list of expenditure is there which you can do for the purposes of CSR, All right, so that takes care of schedule 7. So if I'm undecided where should I spend, you transfer the amount to schedule 7 and that meets the requirement of CSR transactions. Acha, what do I do? How do I account for CSR? Now, how do I account for CSR? This becomes very usual what we do. So revenue expenditure, take it to the P&L account. You will pass the entry as CSR expenses account debit to cash bank. Okay. Administrative overheads shall not exceed 5% of total CSR for the financial year. Obviously, you cannot say my admin expenses only are being incurred, because that would amount to allocating your admin overheads to CSR. So overheads shall not exceed 5%. Any surplus out of the CSR activities. Okay, this is something which we will see towards the later part of this chapter. Okay, I will be covering that, but we will be looking at what it is exactly. Okay, now whether a provision, okay, the treatment of revenue expenditure will be same under AS and Ind AS. All right, that is fine. Whether a provision for unspent amount needs to be created? Yes. See, so far whenever we have discussed, yaad karo 135.6, ongoing project. Definitely it is allowed. It is definitely allowed. Land purchased for any mentioned project. Yes, you are constructing a school. For that school, you have to procure land. Amount paid for that land becomes your CSR spend. Yes. So now I'm going to come slowly towards capex and revenue expenditure. Okay. So now please pay attention. Whether provision for unspent amount needs to be created. See, in case of an ongoing project, within 30 days, jo bhi unspent amount hai, you will have to transfer it to unspent CSR account. So is it an obligation on you? Yes, it is an obligation upon you. If you are not sure where to spend, then second proviso to 135.5, transfer the amount to any fund mentioned in schedule 7 within 6 months from the end of the financial year. So therefore, do you have an obligation to incur? Answer is yes. So in any case, whether it is ongoing project or otherwise, do you have an obligation for the balance amount? Answer is yes. And therefore, does it meet the condition of provisions under Ind AS 37? Answer is yes. A provision is an obligation. When is the obligation getting triggered? Because you have earned a profit in the past year. And because you have earned the profit in the previous financial year, today you are having the trigger of CSR, and therefore the provision for any unspent amount is required to be created mandatorily, because it fulfills the definition of provision under Ind AS 37. So you will have to create a provision for a liability representing the amount, the extent to which the amount is to be transferred. Kahan pe it should be transferred to a fund specified in schedule 7. We will create a provision for this. If it is an ongoing project, the amount to be transferred within 30 days. needs to be recognized in the financial statements. So in our question, yaad karo, 200 crore was the CSR spend required to be done. 70 was for the project, 130 undecided. You will still make a provision for the entire 200 crore in your financial statements, because 130 crore has to be paid within 6 months, and out of that balance 70, 30 you have paid, 40 you have to pay to the unspent CSR account within a period of 30 days from the end of the financial year. So therefore, you will have to create a provision. Answer is yes. Whether it is ongoing or otherwise, you have to create the provision. There is an obligation to transfer the unspent account to a separate bank account, and therefore recognize the provision. Recognize the provisions. Is it okay? Yes. All right. Whether excess amount is allowed to be carried forward, we have discussed this. Answer is yes. Can you carry it forward? Yes. Okay. Now, what are you going to do? Such excess amount may be set off against the requirement to be spent up to immediate succeeding 3 financial years. Succeeding 3 financial years. Okay. So for the amount that you have paid extra, you can recognize it as an asset. You can recognize it as an asset. So that will be regarded as prepaid CSR expenses. That will be regarded as prepaid CSR expenses. Okay. Now, ye ho gaya mera. Okay. So go through this. Go through these examples. Chote chote hain. Should not take much time. Okay. These are very small examples. So go through them, then you will be able to understand. Okay. Now, expenditures made in, Okay. All right. Can you make expenditure in kind? Can you make expenditure in kind? There are some guidelines. Okay. That means goods. If you decide to sell, if you decide to distribute as free samples, then is it going to be CSR? Okay. So a company acquires or purchases the goods and distributes or uses the same in the CSR project. Is it allowed as a CSR spend? Answer is yes. For example, Reliance Industries Limited distributes Parle-G in a flooded area. Okay. Reliance Industries distributes Parle-G in a flooded area. Okay. So flood has happened. There is a loss of property. People are homeless, and Reliance Industries decides to distribute Parle-G to these people. Okay. A glucose biscuit. So will it be a CSR spend? Answer is yes, because Parle-G is not manufactured by Reliance Industries. So it won't amount to promotion of a brand. It won't amount to promotion of a brand. A company manufacturing or dealing in goods or services distributes those goods or services itself free of charge as CSR spends, may not be covered in CSR spend. Parle-G only distributes Parle-G. So Parle company distributes Parle-G to the flooded area. Okay. Parle company distributes Parle-G. Is this going to be a CSR spend? Answer is no. Why no? Because this can amount to a brand promotion activity. And that is why the guidelines say that a company manufacturing and distributing its own product cannot be a CSR spend. Company purchases other product and distributes it, it is a CSR spend. खुद का product distribute कर रहा है, it is not a CSR spend. However, there is one exception that is there, that is a pharmaceutical company donating medicines or drugs can be regarded as a CSR activities. So in a flooded area, suppose you have a pharmaceutical company distributing paracetamol, Dolo, whatever those names are there. Okay, cough syrups, and then you could be distributing certain other regular tablets and syrups. Those distributions, though it has only manufactured only in that specific case, those distributions will be regarded as CSR. Otherwise, a company distributing its own products cannot be regarded as CSR. Suppose there is a statutory requirement to render services. For example, hospital rendering free medical services to 25% patient as per local government guidelines. This is not CSR. Why it is not CSR? Because you're doing it as an obligation. But suppose instead of 25%, you give free services to 30%. Then the extra 5% will be regarded as CSR. Okay. Company manufacturing goods distributes or sell goods other than those which it manufactures. For example, manufacturer of steel rods manufactures steel beds. Okay. So it would be, if it is given free of charge, it would be a CSR spends. If the beds are sold, then it is not a CSR spend. Then it is not a CSR spend. Sir, if Reliance gave free petrol and diesel for fulfilling CSR to other companies, no, it will amount. Reliance, I presume this is the same Reliance that is running petrol, pumps and petrol stations. Then it will not amount to CSR. Okay, it will not amount to CSR. खुद का product बेचना, producing and distributing your own product will not amount to CSR unless you are a pharmaceutical company distributing medicines and drugs. The Act is very clear on that. Okay, coming to the next one, other considerations in recognitions and measurement. Okay, all right, let us look at this. All right, now okay, assets. Let us look at the nature of CSR spends. Okay, now this is very typical. I am explaining the position prior to an amendment. Then there is an amendment, and that should sort out the whole thing. Okay, so now what happens is revenue expenditure CSR, no problem, expense it to P&L, there won't be an issue. But suppose if I incur a capital expenditure, जैसे मैंने building बनाया, I made a school building, I make a hospital building, I make a place for midday meal schemes. Okay, so these are all in the nature of a capital item. These are all in the nature of a capital asset. So now, how do I record this capital asset? Well, first case, if you transfer the school to a village panchayat, if you transfer the hospital to a municipality, if you incur these expenses and transfer the resulting asset to a local authority, then obviously you are not having control over this asset. And because you are not having control over this asset, what will happen is you will treat the expenditure on construction of such hospital, school, whatever it is, you will expense it out to P&L because you don't have an asset in your control. For asset, for recognizing an asset, what is important is you should have control over that. When you don't have a control, वो आपका asset है ही नहीं. It is transferred to a local authority. Local authority has control over that, and therefore, in this case, you will expense it out to the profit and loss. You will expense it to the P&L. However, in some cases, the company may choose to own such an asset. Why? For example, in panchayats and all, you are going to have certain notorious elements who do not carry out the activity of teaching or schooling in such buildings. They may use it for their own purposes. आज शादी करा दिया, उसमें से जो it is a big area, तो वहां पे बारात आएगी, वहां पे they will spend the night and then they will carry out the function and then they will go back. And for letting out this space, the local authority is going to take money. तो ऐसे ही they will conduct fairs, they will conduct festivals, they will conduct events. Everything is being done except the purpose for which it was given, that is for running a school for the underprivileged children. Because paisa hai in the conducting events and festivals, but there is no money in conducting schooling for the underprivileged children. So to avoid this, what the company will do is, the company will continue to own that asset, and therefore the asset appears in the books of the company. And because the asset appears in the books of the company, we will have to treat it as a capital expenditure, and therefore we will treat it as a capex, and we will recognize it as CSR spends. P&L mein nahi dikhega, it won't be visible in the P&L, it will be visible in the balance sheet. It will be visible in the balance sheet. Acha, will you recognize the capital expenditure as a CSR? Definitely. So if you are recognizing the capital expenditure as a CSR, then obviously when you depreciate that asset, depreciation will not be recognized as CSR. Depreciation will not be recognized as CSR. Not recognized as CSR, because you got the full recognition when the capex was incurred. So now you will not say that again depreciation is my CSR spends. Okay, so that takes care of that. Then coming to the next part, journal entries, expense in cash, CSR spends account debit to cash bank. Suppose you have made it in kind, then purchases account to cash bank is what you would have passed, and then you are distributing those purchases only. So CSR spends account debit to purchases. This has to happen at cost only. You cannot add any markup to that. Okay. CSR obligations, you will pass the entry CSR spends, which is essentially net profit into 2%, to bank or purchases, to CSR spends payable, you will to transfer it to funds. This is second proviso to 135(5). And then if you want to transfer it to unspent CSR account, you will credit it to unspent CSR account 135(6). Excess CSR spends, you have an option, you can recognize it as a prepaid CSR spends by virtue of third proviso to section 135(5). Distribution of spectacles, eye operation of senior citizens, all of that is allowed as a CSR. Distribution of spectacles by Lenskart will not be allowed. Distribution of spectacles by a hospital could be allowed. Okay. Carrying out eye operations or certain testings or testings for underprivileged, that will all be allowed as a CSR expense. Okay. All right. Now, in all the cases, we saw that there could be a case where certain surplus could be generated. Kaushiki only had asked a question. If I park the money in an escrow account, and if that escrow account starts to generate interest, what do I do with that interest? Okay. So this is what you are going to do. Okay. The fundamental issue is a company cannot profit from the CSR incomes, from the CSR activities. CSR ka koi bhi benefit, no benefit should arise to the CSR through the CSR activities to the company. Outflow means it must be a very strict outflow. So today, suppose L&T collects 1 rupee per year for each student. Record purposes ke liye, only for record purposes, it collects 1 rupee per annum as a student registration fee to record the what you can say, the name of the child, the house address, any contact details, all that ke liye it is just collecting 1 rupee per annum. Now, is the school in the name of the L&T company? Yes, it is. Has it spent? Yes, it has. Is it getting an income? Yes, it is. Should it be regarded as income? Answer is no, it should not. So therefore, what will be done is, the moment I get an income, I should recognize a liability of the same amount. So for example, when L&T gets the money, entry will be bank account debit to income from CSR projects. Immediately, CSR spends account debit to CSR spends payable for this 1,000. For this 1,000. This spends will be over and above the 2% minimum spends. These spends will be over and above the 2% minimum spends. I am giving a hypothetical example that if the escrow account starts to get interest, then this is the treatment that you will follow. You cannot profit from a CSR activity. You cannot profit. So if at all you get interest, you don't get, but suppose you get an interest, the entry will be bank account debit to interest on escrow account, and the same amount you will create immediately a spends payable liability. Yes, this will be over and above the 2% minimum spends that exist. This will be over and above the 2% minimum spends that exist. Okay. Now, this is the treatment for any income that you are generating. This is the income. This is the treatment for any income that you are generating. Is it okay? Have you understood? Incomes should not be part of my P&L entirely. It should be expensed out as CSR because I cannot profit from any CSR activity. That is important. That is important to remember. Is it okay? Yes, is it okay? हम CSR के अमाउंट से फायदे में नहीं रह सकते. We cannot. When I say 2% spends, it should mean actual spends without any benefit accruing to the company. Okay, so these are CSR spends. Income generated from CSR projects also is covered. Okay. Coming back to the capex, see what happens is depreciation is allowed every year. Depreciation is allowed. See, this was the flaw which was noticed. Okay, this was the flaw which was noticed. Depreciation is charged on a capex asset. That asset is acquired for tax purposes. Now, suppose I have to calculate the profit for the year. Profit for the year means I will depreciate that asset. Yes, sir, I will depreciate. And because I depreciate that asset, what am I going to do? The profits for the current year is going down. The profit for the current year is going down. And because the profit for the current year is going down on account of depreciation on assets which are in the nature of CSR assets, the standard tells us that the statute tells us you cannot benefit because today profit goes down on account of a CSR asset. That means in the future your CSR obligation will go down. Why? Because depreciation is hitting the P&L, and because depreciation hits the P&L, you cannot take it as a what you say, you cannot take it as an expenditure. Okay, you cannot benefit from this. And for these purposes, there is an amendment that says that any capex item that is constructed has to mandatorily be transferred either to a Section 8 company or to a registered trust or to a trust that is done in collaboration with other companies. Mandatorily, the company cannot retain the capital asset that it has constructed. Okay, so the amendment says that company has to transfer the asset to a Section 8 company or trust or registered trust within 180 days. Within 180 days. Is it okay? Yes. Are you clear? Yes, you will have to transfer. You will have to transfer. Okay. All right. So that takes care of this part. Journal entries of CSR are done. Income is there. Immediately recognize a liability. This liability will be over and above the threshold, over and above the 2% requirement. Okay. So other considerations and in recognition and measurement, we have done this. CSR activity giving rise to an asset. We have done this as well. Yes. And this is effective from 2021. Okay. All right. 1 second. Let me just add to this. Within 180 days and within 180 days with extension allowed up to 90 days. Up to 90 days. So you will transfer it. It will go as an expense. That's it. You cannot retain this as an asset in the books of the company. The trust will maintain it. The trust will maintain it. Okay. So this is what you are going to look at. Okay. Then we have done recognition of this. Go through these questions as part of your homework. They are simple. Recognition of income, we have discussed. Treatment of surplus. Journal entries, we have seen. CSR expenditure in income tax scenario, it is an application of income not allowed for deduction. Okay. And now by virtue of the GST amendment that has come, input tax credit cannot be claimed on CSR spends. Input tax credit cannot be claimed on CSR spends. So how should you disclose? How should you report? Well, you will disclose it by way of a note to the statement of profit and loss. Okay. From the perspective of better financial reporting and still be in line with Schedule 3, recommended that all expenditure on CSR activities that qualify as an expense should be recognized as a separate line item in CSR expenditure. Okay. Disclose breakup of various expenses in your profit and loss. Okay. Sometimes the company is incurring losses, but it is still obligated under section 135 to meet the administrative overhead shall not exceed 5%. That is right. Okay. It may also happen that a company is incurring losses, but it may still satisfy other conditions specified under section 135 of the Act. Becomes liable to comply with the provisions of the section 135 and companies rules. But there are no profits. So therefore, no spends are required. You meet the turnover criteria. Companies like Amazon, Flipkart, etc. Okay. If they are carrying out certain selling activities, they will meet the turnover criteria. But the important point is they are not making profits. So because they are not making profits, I will not book an expense. I will not book a CSR expense, but I will have to carry out all the disclosures. So you are going to tell what is the amount required to be spent, what is approved by the board, and what is spent during the year. Above disclosure may also be made in the notes to the cash flow statement where applicable. Related party transactions, you will have to give the details as per Ind AS 24. Okay. When the amendments to 135, 5 and 6 are made applicable, following in the notes, details in the notes should also be made. Okay. Provision is made, should be presented as per requirements of Schedule 3. Incurred in kind, measure the inventories as per Ind AS 2. That's it. There is nothing else left. Okay. So what are you going to do? Property constructed to operate CSR activities. So you should take it. Are there any disclosure at the balance sheet date? The cost of construction is treated as revenue expenditure. Fair enough. Okay. Are there any additional disclosures? No. In the year 20 means, are there any additional disclosures? That means disclose the details with regard to expenditure incurred in cost of construction of a capital asset. Ultimately, it will go to that trust. This is an answer that is going to change. Okay. This is an answer that is going to change. XYZ falls within the purview of CSR provisions as its profit for the financial year exceeded 5 crore. Company discharged CSR obligations in X2. Net profit of the year X2 was less than 5 crores. It was not satisfying the other two criteria of section 135. Therefore, the company stopped performing CSR activities. Is the company's accountability correct? Yes. Is it correct? Yes. You cannot say that, because since I am in a scenario where I look at the preceding year, in the preceding year, the net profit was less than 5 crore. You did not meet the two criteria. So 20X3, there is no need for you to perform CSR activities. Yes, correct treatment. But if you look at this, criteria, then what has happened is, it is saying based on erstwhile rule 3.2. This rule 3.2 has been deleted. This rule 3.2 has been deleted. And therefore, you cannot have these requirements anymore. Okay, you cannot have these requirements anymore. If you do not meet a condition in a previous year, current year, there is no need for you to fulfill the CSR obligations. Don't look at this answer. It is going to create a confusion. Company A is incorporated during X1, X2. As per eligibility criteria, company is covered under 135(1) for financial year X3, X4. Whether CSR provisions apply, definitely they will apply if the preceding periods are less than 3 years. All the 3 years will be considered. Is it okay? So that is there. And that kind of concludes all the questions. Please go through the illustrations. बहुत simple है. It's quite simple. And go through the provisions as well. We have done 135. We have done the rules. We have done all the amendments also. Apart from that, what they have done in the latest amendment is, in the CSR spends, they have included a company under section 8, registered public trust, society, exempted under subclauses 4, 5, 6, 6A of section 10 of clause 23C section 10 or section 12A and approved under 8TG. So income tax wale bhi aa gaye aapke. That is societies under 1023C, 4, 5, 6 and 6A. Okay, so all these are also included. Company established under section 8, registered public trust or a society, exempted under subclauses 4, 5, 6, 6A or clause 23 of section 10. Okay, and registered under section 12A, approved under section 80G. So all these are also included. Pehle ye tha nahi, this was not there. These are just the forms for the purposes of reporting. So we have completed all that was there to be completed in CSR, including CSR rules 21, CSR rules 22, 2014, and the main provisions, that is section 135(1) to section 135(9). We have seen the treatment in the case of CSR assets also. We have also seen the treatment of CSR revenue expenditure as well. Okay, so with that, it kind of concludes our chapter. There is nothing major left to be discussed. Okay, if you have any doubts, any queries, please let me know. Otherwise, we can be in a position to wind up the session. Okay, any doubts, anyone? Anyone has any doubts? It was a bit fast, but I don't think there is anything left to discuss in this chapter now. Okay, it's a fairly theoretical chapter. You should be in a position to solve it. Anybody has any doubts, any request? Bolo. Kaushiki, Viraj, Shailendra, Soham. Any doubts? बोलो यार. Come on, tell me. No doubts. Shailendra has confirmed. Soham, Kaushiki, Viraj, all clear. You will have to do those questions, illustrations by yourselves. It's quite simple. Okay. I don't want to do that because उसी बहाने आप लोग पढ़ लोगे. Okay. उसी बहाने आप लोग पढ़ लोगे. Yes. Did you try? I did not get any answers for that deferred tax homework which I had given you. Okay. I did not get any message or any problem or anything of that sort. Okay. Please try. Okay. Do these questions because these are mandatory to be done. Okay. So anything else is required from my side for this chapter? Soham, Viraj, Sanjay. Yes. Nothing, no doubts. Okay. All right, fine. So with that, we conclude today's session, and I think the batch from my side also is done. So thank you, everyone. It has been great to be with you all. Whatever has been possible from my side, I have tried to complete it to the best of my abilities. Okay. Please feel free to connect with me on the mails. Yes, for any doubts that you have, for any issues that you have. Some of you may be answering the May 23 examinations. We've covered the amendments, so you should be in a position to apply those amendments. And those of you who are answering in the later attempt, we can continue to meet up. Yes, and study well. FR is not a scary paper. Okay, FR is not a scary paper the way some people make it out. It is one of the most scoring papers, one of the papers where I'm sure all of you are very comfortable with. So don't think that FR is scary. Lengthy ho sakta hai, but it is not a scary paper. So practice your paper writing. Definitely, for sure. Mock test karo. Try to ensure you solve the past question papers so that you get an idea, you get the speed, you get an understanding of time management in the examination hall. Solve under exam conditions. So then what happens is you can go as a more confident person in the examination hall. Okay. Rest, I don't think any of you need to fear the subject, need to fear any subject. All of you are bright in your own way. Yes, don't underestimate yourselves. Somebody has been good, is good in theory. Somebody may be good in practicals. Somebody may be good in both. Identify your strengths. Identify your weaknesses. Ensure that your strength translates into marks, and ensure that you work on the weaknesses to convert them into strengths. Okay. So with that brief I end my session. I don't know if we meet again in the future. Yes. So in future, if our paths cross, I will definitely be glad to meet you. Yes, we'll definitely be happy to meet you in person. And we are all waiting here at the institute to welcome you as members. Yes. So put your best foot forward and ensure that you clear the examination. Okay. Definitely. Okay. Definitely. I will surely reach out to you Okay, so with that, we end today's session. You can always reach out to me through the institute. You can always reach out to me through the institute. Thank you, everyone, and all the best for everything in future. Okay, my video is not working. I'm very sorry about that. Okay, uh, see you guys. See you guys, and that's it. Okay, take care, everyone. Take care. Bye bye. Yes, yes. Session.